Hi, I'm Todd Jones, host of the podcast Pressbox Access. Here's a clip from my interview with Tim Smith. Tim takes us on his assignment in search of El Duque after the pitcher signed with the New York Yankees.
So I got sent to Miami to cover the Orange Bowl, and I covered the Orange Bowl for one day. That was photo day, and then I got a call from the editor that said, "Hey, this baseball player, this Cuban baseball player, was just rescued from an atoll near the Bahamas, and he's in a Bahamian detention center. Can you get down to the Bahamas and track the story down and find this guy?" And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know anything about the Bahamas. I don't know where the detention center is. And he's like, yeah, just go down there and report the story. And I was like, okay.
Just another day at the office.
Just another day at the office. So I get on a plane, and I just happened to be at the airport with the photographer. They sent a photographer along, somebody that spoke Spanish. And so they sent me with this photographer. And when I got to the Bahamas, I landed at the airport, and there was a reporter from the Miami Herald there that I knew from covering, football, Armando Salguero.
Right.
He was there. So he said, well, why don't we just ride together to this detention center? And I was like, okay.
And you're looking for Orlando Hernandez, the pitcher.
And I'm
who went
looking
on to
for
pitch
Orlando
for the Yankees.
Hernandez, El Duque,
Right.
who along with like five other people, gets into this makeshift raft and tries to escape Cuba and ends up, on an atoll outside the Bahamas for like 3 days. And, so we get to the detention center, the taxi, and we tell the taxi, look, there's money in it, but you just got to wait for us until we figure out, where we have to go from this point. And this is like one of those bad movies where as soon as you get out of the taxi, it just speeds off. So sitting there, we're like, okay, was it something we said? But we came to find out that the detention center, because there were so many people that were in the Bahamas that were undocumented, if you hung around too much, they would eventually check your papers and you would end up there instead of on the outside driving a taxi. So,
right.
The guy left us there. And so we go up to the gate, to the fence, and we don't see him. So this guy comes over and he says, because he saw the photographer with the camera, and he says, are you guys looking for the baseball player? And we're like, yeah. And he says, he's here. And we go, okay, good. Where is he? He says, he's in that building over there. So we go, okay, well, we're just going to stake this place out. So they bring him out of the building, and they put him in a van, and the van leaves. We're there with no way to get to follow the van or know where it's going.
Yeah, because the taxi guy bolted.
The taxi guy bolted, right? So we asked the guy at the fence, where are they taking him? And he says, well, they're taking him to, the government offices, downtown, where they're going to try to, figure out what to do with him and process him. So we were like, okay, now we know where he went. Now, how do we get there? So this old woman drives by, so we flag her down, and we go, ma'am, if you don't mind, because this place is in the middle of nowhere. Ma'am, if you don't mind, can you take us to this government center downtown? And she's like, well, I came out here to visit my son, but she's like, I think that God put me here to do you guys a favor. So, yeah, I'll take you. So we were like, thank God.
Yeah, an angel.
Yeah, exactly, right? So she takes us, and she has on the back seat of the car, she has like dozens of eggs. I don't know how many eggs there were, but they were stacked in these little crates and everything. And she's like, just put the eggs be careful, put the eggs in the trunk. I don't need any of them broken. And, so we carefully put the eggs in the trunk. And the photographer is like, well, ma'am, I got all this gear. You mind if I put my gear in the trunk, but I'll make sure that the eggs aren't broken. She's like, yeah, no problem. So the photographer puts all of his gear in the trunk. We pile into the car. So she takes us to the center, and she says, I can't take you directly, to the government center. She says, but I'll drop you up a block away. And we were thinking, like, why can't you take it? She's like, oh, it's always, trouble. If you go over there, you get, like, hassled. So we're like, okay, fine.
Well,
just
you're in
off.
deep at this point.
Yeah. So she drops us off. And I'm like, a block away. That's fine with me. So she drops us off, and she points out where, the center is. The photographer reaches into the trunk to get his equipment. Every single egg is busted.
Oh, shit. Scrambled.
Scrambled. Every egg in the trunk is scrambled. So we're like, oh, geez, we just ruined this woman's. So we're like, we can't. The woman's like, she won't take any money because she says God sent her to help us out. So we throw like $50 in the trunk with a busted egg, so she can, so she won't curse us out whenever she gets where she's going with these eggs.
By the way, how did you put that on your expense account?
Yeah, $50 for busted eggs.
Okay.
You don't expense that. You just,
All right.
You leave that alone.
I thought that was a dinner. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a dinner.
All right.
So we get to the detention center, and this very British guy comes out, and he goes, Mr. El Duque will be processed at some point today, but we won't have any more comment on it, so you can all go home. We're like, we're gonna go home. Yeah, right. So so everybody just stays where they are. By this point, more news people come, and it just becomes like this big news scene. There, like television cameras, everything from Miami, they come down.
So did you get to talk to Hernandez at some point?
Yes. After 2 hours of this guy coming back and forth and saying he's not going to talk. He's going to talk today, but we don't know what time. He's going to talk at 3:00 to finally, okay, he's talking, an hour later. Okay, he's talking right now. We got the press conference. So we go in, and it's like him and like 4 other people, and, they start telling the story, but they're telling the story in Spanish, and I don't understand a word of Spanish. So the photographer is standing next to me, and he's translating. And,
he's got egg all over his equipment, and he's translating.
And he's translating, and it's very emotional. El Duque is crying and talking about how God saved them, and if the ship hadn't come by, they had run out of food. There was no fresh water, and they were catching rainwater and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is a great story. I wish I could hear it in the original language, to try to capture some of this. So I captured the emotion, but the language. So when we're there, this baseball agent shows up, and we see him like passing out money to some of the officials, and so we go, okay, this isn't going to take long. This guy's going to be free pretty soon, but we don't know where he's going to go. And so the agent is like, well, he can't come to America, because if he comes to America, then his baseball rights become open to everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody can, sort of draft him or whatever. He can just bid on him. Part of the draft or whatever. He said, but if he goes to Costa Rica, he can just make a deal directly with the Yankees, which is
so the Yankees were making sure he's heading to Costa Rica.
The Yankees were pulling the strings to make sure that he goes to Costa Rica. So he ends up going to Costa Rica, and he ends up signing with the Yankees and becoming El Duque.
Well, the story, and then the story ends up being a little question, right? I mean, they're 10 hours on this raft, 8 guys from Cuba. Yes. They're swimming, there's sharks. Yes. And then you're like, later it's like, did that really happen?
No, they plucked this guy. He left Cuba, and somebody plucked him out of the water on the way to wherever and dumped him. This is just personally what I think. I think the guy got plucked out of the water, put on the atoll. Somebody just happened to come by the atoll, and it happened to be near the Bahamas. And then they took him to Bahamas, and then they worked this whole thing out to get him to Costa Rica.
I think the Yankees had some guy, George Costanza, come up with a story about sharks and swimming and 10 hours.
And opening your mouth for rainwater. And Yeah,
hey, it was a good story. You know,
it was a great story.
what is the truth right at that point? So, you know.
Yeah, at this point, don't let truth get in the way of a great story.